The presenting sponsor for the Intersections podcast is Lynn, Pinker, Hurst, and Schwegman. Built on a culture of winning, these trial lawyers have proven experience, elite preparation, and relentless focus in the areas of commercial, intellectual property, and employment litigation. Visit Lynn LLP to learn more. And thank you so much to the Lynn, Pinker, Hurst, and Schwegman Group for all you're doing to support the Intersections podcast. This episode is brought to you in partnership by Clay Cooley Automotive, family-owned, family-operated automotive company serving the local DFW Metroplex for over 22 years. Clay, thank you for all you're doing to make Intersections possible. Welcome to Intersections. Take a multi-generational look at critical issues facing America. Tom, we're having fun today.
We have taken the show on the road, as they say. We are in Augusta, Georgia. This is the scene of the Augusta National Women's Amateur. It is the premier women's amateur golf tournament. We're with Blake Walker. Blake is the founder and the CEO of Arcis Golf, owner of nearly 90 golf courses across the country. The one that we're at is one of those.
It is.
Blake, it's great to have you with us. Blake, you are probably one of the most influential people in golf, according to polls and that sort of thing. They actually called you the Jeff Bezos of golf. Now, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you can interpret
Tom,
that.
I'm not sure what that means either, but thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit, just start off with, on this tournament. You're one of the key sponsors of this tournament, along with Augusta National Golf Club. I know it's done an awful lot for your organization. Just give us a little bit of background of how you got involved and all around us.
Well, first and foremost, it's truly an honor to support Augusta National in hosting this event. And, from an Arcis perspective, for us, it's really about growing the game with our 90 golf courses. And there's no better place to showcase the ladies than on a stage like this, for sure. And this is our third year to host.
So you started out hosting this in 2023?
Yes.
And can you give us a little history of the Augusta National Women's Amateur? Can you just tell us about the tournament, tell us why we're here, Champions Retreat, et cetera?
Okay. So the tournament's been in existence for 7 years, and we've owned the club for the past 3. And so it's back to those grow the game initiatives. As you both know, women's the fastest growing segment within golf. And for us, we already have 15 ambassadors within our organization, all of which are women. Mm-hmm. And we have 5 collegiate players, all 5 qualified for the Augusta National Women's Amateur this week. So it's a really symbiotic relationship in terms of what we're doing in terms of our grow the game initiatives. We also, as you know, we've got a partnership with the LPGA in which we provide access to players in that program as well.
Well, let's go back. Arcis Golf, relatively new operation. As I mentioned, you founded it. You're the CEO. Moved into 90 golf courses across the country right now. Talk a little bit about that organization and what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, initially the thesis was that from a golf perspective, there was a much larger consumer segment, and that for us to attract women, more diverse populations, younger populations, that we needed a portfolio that really fit the breadth and scope of that. And so initially, I thought, if we could own and operate everything from middle market daily fees to high end privates in every major metropolitan area, that we might be onto something in terms of that grow the game initiative. And so, initially, as you mentioned, we started with a large acquisition of CNL, which really gave us a presence within most major metropolitan areas.
Now, based in Dallas, but different than a Club Corp or now Invited and some of the others. You've really got multiple business models. So you've got not only high-end clubs, to be truthful with you, where we are today, but you have an awful lot of clubs that would be kind of a daily fee, affordable for the masses, so to speak. Talk about those different business models and how you bring those together, because I don't know of a lot of folks that bring different business models together under one umbrella.
No, absolutely, Tom. It's our middle market daily fees. Really, the range is really more the front door for the vast majority of those customers. I mean, a lot of those folks are cargo shorts and t-shirts, and it's a very new sport to them, and we want to make it as approachable as possible. And so we really bring the food and beverage experience to the range, utilize more gamification. Whereas at a facility like this, we have TrackMan here, and it's more about player development and hosting championships.
So you talk about these kind of newer adopters of the golf game. Talk about what COVID did for golf and what it did for your business. It obviously grew the game. I wouldn't say golf was totally dead prior to COVID, but it was on a low life support. Talk about how the game's grown the last 6 years.
Now, I mean, contrary to popular belief, we were not on life support before COVID, but COVID, obviously forced people outside, and golf was a great for not only for recreation, but for a sense of community, for people to get together. And so it was as strange as it sounds, a gift in that regard, but it also taught us a lot about how to be better at our business because, again, we had to eliminate friction for the customer and from a technology standpoint and check in and how we monetize that experience. We really, I would say, evolved, a decade going through that experience.
So what kind of a company are you? You've got the golf courses, so you've got a lot of turf in that. You touched on the hospitality, though, and how important that is. But then you also touched on the technology. I mean, what kind of a company is Arcis?
It's absolutely a lifestyle company. And the way we look at it is that we want it to be family centric. We want to drive that share of wallet for every family member. I mean, you look at a facility like this. I mean, we have at Champions Retreat, we have a concierge department in which, upon arrival, and for the family comes for say Thanksgiving, they can arrange for 5-stand, fly fishing, whatever the case may be. In addition to golf, we provide, dinner service within our cabins with private chefs. We have multiple food and beverage outlets. We're in the process, once the tournament ends this week, we're going to build indoor racket facility. Wow. So there'll be a lot of amenities for the entire family. And that's really similar to every club we own. Really the only difference is breadth and scope. This is obviously a higher end facility. The more middle market clubs, it's very similar in terms of the sort of programming we're doing there.
So you've got high end, you've got the private clubs, and then the daily play ones, the daily fee. You made a comment to Kyle and I earlier before we started that it's the woman in the family that's really the decision maker. And I was taken back by that. The decision to join a club is made by the female.
See, I mean, Tom, your marriage is very different than mine because my wife's made the decisions on everything we've done ever since. No, in golf, and by the way, she makes great decisions if she watches this.
Good save there, Blake.
Thank you. Every once in a while. I think that, for us, what we would see is the non-playing spouse or significant other made that decision for golf. And so as we began to think about what sort of programming and content, what sort of experiences would they want to realize, and that's really where our 4 pillars thesis, which we've talked about before, which really focuses on unique culinary experiences, content programming, lifestyle, like what we talked about here with racket sports and fly fishing and the like. And when you begin to look at that, there's something for every member of the family. And those females that were making decisions before were asking questions like, is there food I can eat? Is there a resort style pool? Are the health and wellness facilities what they need to be to support our entire family?
So most of that actually going through that, you didn't really mention golf at all in that. You talked about the quality of food, wellness, those sorts of things. Is that where Arcis is evolving? Yes, it's a golf because we talk about the golf courses, but that's just kind of the starter?
It's foundational. I mean, the golf has to be good, obviously, has to be very good, and it will always be the foundation of our business. But I think what you'll see as we continue to evolve, we'll lean in more to health and wellness and longevity, and we already have from a food and beverage perspective. You've seen some of that today.
Well, take us to 2 other courses. I want to take you to Arizona to Greyhawk, and I want to take you to Cowboys Golf Club back in Dallas. What have you done there to expand on some of this vision of creating really these lifestyle locations more than just a golf course?
No, and great question. I mean, Cowboys Golf Club we just completed, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to see it or not, but you absolutely should go out and experience it. I mean, there's nothing like it in the country. We acquired the field from the Dallas Cowboys. We acquired goalposts from the Cowboys. We added a gamification component with Topgolf there. Sure. In addition to an 18-hole synthetic putting course, it's themed. From a Cowboys perspective. And then we also, brought Bo Welling in and with our internal construction team redid the entire golf course this past year. And so it provides a championship experience for people, but it's also an approachable for new people to the game where they can go out and utilize the range and hit it through the goalpost, or they can be on the putting course. So I think that's really emblematic of what we're doing in that regard. And then from a Greyhawk perspective, if you've played Greyhawk, I mean Greyhawk is from a golf perspective is about as good as it gets. And we've hosted NCAA championships and a variety of tournaments there.
I think it's the only course where we actually had a 3-year running.
Yeah. We did host for 3 years. And so there, we're in the process of, we're building a social house here this next year there, which will be, really geared towards the exact demographic we described. And that content and programming will be geared towards a younger demographic and decidedly more female. In addition to that, we're transforming all the food and beverage restaurants. We have multiple outlets there. And we'll also begin construction of a short course there next year also.
So how did Blake Walker evolve? You ended up largely being on the investment side, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this and give people a sense of the background. But you started on the investment side. But over the last 10 or 15 minutes, you haven't talked anything about financial. You've all talked from an operating standpoint, customer service, dealing with your employees, the experience, all those sorts of things. So how does Blake Walker, as an executive, a leader, evolve from a financial background to understanding how important the operating is and being the leader of the operating side?
I think earlier in my career, Tom, that, the importance of cash on cash yields and being good at math was, important to me. But what I've learned, in the past, 15 years is that there's a direct relationship with the experience in terms of driving those cash on cash yields. And if we're not driving those, we're not good enough. And so I spend a lot more time thinking about what's possible from an operational perspective and what types of experiences we can create than quantifying what those yields look like.
So how do you accomplish that, though? Clearly having a great golf course, turf management, those sorts of things, terrific facilities like we see. But most of the customer service is the interaction among two individuals, the customer and then the representative of your company. How do you manage that customer experience, understanding how important it is?
I mean, we are incredibly selective from a talent perspective within our organization. We have a lot of incredibly talented people that have very diverse backgrounds from resort, hotel, and golf, and a variety of other industries, quite frankly. And for me, when I go to a property like this, you've met a few of those people today. I mean, we have people from Switzerland and from Dublin and from all over the world that come to work within our organization that provide that sort of emotional connection and that experience. And for me, it's great to have a thesis and it's great to have some beautiful clubs like this, but we are absolutely nothing without those individuals on a daily basis. And in terms of that connection and that service and that experience.
They're world-class people. We saw that today. They've got a lot of different options. Why did they come to Arcis?
I think the culture's unique. It's again, I'm admittedly biased. I'm the founder, but I think the relationships here are genuine. They're authentic. I mean, these people spend a lot of time together. I mean, if you live in Augusta, Georgia, and you work 6 days a week, you better like the people you work with, right?
Sure.
And I think when you begin to look at a club like this, and as we continue to evolve and get better, what types of people need to be working in those facilities? So, today, all the people we've alluded to, none of them had golf backgrounds. A lot of them had hotel backgrounds. A lot of them
hospitality.
Yeah, hospitality.
So, I want to jump in on kind of core pillars because you talk about culture and people, to Tom's point, have a lot of places to go. But talk to us and really describe in depth what those core pillars are for Arcis and why those people are staying here.
I think it really is. It's our axioms, and which we talk a lot about, and we've talked a little bit about before. And I mean, and we hire for those. And then the first one is humility. I mean, there's a lot of talented people, but I know in my own life the worst mistakes I've ever made I've made without a lack of humility, quite frankly. And I also think that a lot of these people have phenomenal experience, and they're as good as it gets at what they do, and they're grateful. And that's sort of the bookend in terms of the axioms.
But that's almost the key of the 8 that you talk about. The 6 in the middle, for the large part, I could pull most corporations across the country, and I'd get some version of those 6. But the bookends, which you talked about, is the interesting thing. It's the humility on the front end and the gratefulness, the gratitude on the back end. Where did that come out of Blake Walker?
I've had an opportunity to work for some really talented, smart people, and I clearly that took a flyer on me, and in many senses, I question why at that point, right? But I learned what good looked like. And I think as a leader, at least for me, the first time I was a CEO of a startup, I really compartmentalized those traits within organizations, and I thought about the way I wanted it to be. And I think we've created something really special here. And most of the people in our organization have significant tenure. I mean, the individuals you just spoke with, they've worked in this organization with me at multiple organizations prior to Arcis, and Arcis has been in existence 11 years.
But you also do some different things. I mean, in terms of the hiring and that, you use psychologists to do part of the interviewing.
That's true, and because I've made all the mistakes, right? I used to test for IQ and provide case studies, and that gets you so far. And quite frankly, in a finance environment, it works pretty well. But when this is more art than science, from a hospitality and that emotional connection and the way you make people feel, and so I began thinking a lot more about the psychology of it and how these individuals are wired, and so we hired, a clinical psychologist, with a PhD, and began creating tests in which we test every employee in this organization. Some are
testing for
everything from abstract reasoning to, and a lot of it's quantifiable and from an intelligence perspective, but the vast majority of it is just how they're wired, psychologically. I mean, are they predisposed to have a servant's heart? And is this something that gives them joy to do? Because a lot of the things we're asking people to do, again, we just had lunch. You experienced our people.
It was fantastic.
It's their passion.
Yeah.
It's truly what they love to do. And so we, as simple as it sounds, we began hiring for that. And there is some science to it. And that test is 5 hours long.
Wow.
And they spend 2 hours with a PhD afterwards on an interview process, in addition to interviewing across our portfolio with a variety of subject matter experts, which test them on each of the axioms.
Yeah, Kyle and I have often talked. I've got a great belief that you can educate people. In other words, you can influence the head, but you can't change their heart. If they don't have the right standards, values, principles, et cetera, that doesn't go, which it sounds like, Blake, that's a lot of what you're trying to get at.
Well said.
So what's the feedback that you get from the psychologists?
Well, 90% of the time, if they make it through the gauntlet with our people, they're a good fit.
It's more reinforcement then.
Yeah, it's more reinforcement, and the technical competency piece is easy, but I would say, probably 5% of the time, she'll say, you should never hire this guy, or and that's because I myself have been tested, and in that sense, it's if that person's going to have a direct reporting relationship with me, and they move at a different pace, and they think differently about the business, or they're just wired differently in terms of the pace, it'd be a problem. And so far, I've adhered to that advice on every occasion.
Well, let's talk about how Arcis got to this point. You said second largest owner of golf courses in this nation, significant growth you've seen. Capital value of the enterprise north of $2.5 billion. You started from zero, though. Let's even go before that. SMU graduate. Then from there, you were influenced to go into a pretty high pressure environment and an entity that was basically funded by KKR.
No, that's great, and it was a phenomenal experience. And believe me, I was the most surprised guy in the room when I got hired. But because I had little to no experience. I mean, I find in my life some, that I've been really fortunate and that I've had a lot of folks that have seen something and have given me that opportunity. And I think that's part of our culture here in terms of we would much prefer to grow from within. But, working at, as you mentioned, KKR's investment affiliate was KSL Capital. And initially my plan was to go to work there a couple of years ago.
La Quinta, ski resorts, everything.
Yeah. And then go back to business school, check that box in terms of, and go back to business school. And they offered me a job to stay, and I became director of acquisitions there. And we did thematic investing. So we looked at everything from, travel, tourism, recreation, sports teams, whatever the case may be. And again, it evolved into these destination resorts like, Doral, PJ West, La Quinta. Sure. And I just began to develop competency there, and that evolved from that point.
And then you moved on to, at that time, Club Corp.
Yeah.
And that's right. It was interesting. I'd had a taste of that experience, and I had worked with the best and brightest, and I thought I wanted to move to New York and have a more commercial role with another investment firm. And I flew into Dallas, and I met with a professor, John Slocum at SMU. And I, at the time, I would not have said that then, but I'll say it now. I was doing a bit of a victory lap with John. I was telling him about all the fancy firms I was interviewing with, and I thought he'd be proud of me. And John looked at me and he said, Blake, basically, I thought you were a smart guy, but if you had half the intellect you espoused, you'd be thinking about this differently. And I said, well, John, educate me. And so he said, look, the best investors I've ever met in my life are people that don't become generalists and compete on a macro basis. They become experts in a specific sector.
They know a business.
And he said, I think that you've got a great commercial background from an investment perspective, but you have very little exposure to sort of visionary operators. And couldn't disagree with any of that, obviously. And he said, you need to work for a guy like Robert Dedman. And I looked at him and said, that's great, John, but I don't know Bob Dedman. And he provided the introduction, and I went to Club Corp and spent time with Robert prior to his death, and I'd never been around a visionary guy like that. I'd worked with a lot of guys that were good at math, but I'd never worked with someone like that, and it taught me a lot about navigating not only investing, but it also gave me this desire to want to be a CEO.
So what stuck out in that time? Like, what were the things that Robert Dedman instilled in you, or you learned from afar, just watching his behavior and the culture of that environment, that stuck out and changed you?
And in fairness, I mean, my exposure, to Robert was, he was kind enough, and really, Bob Jr. was really the driver of it. I mean, Bob, I had more direct contact with Bob, and Bob's an incredibly talented guy as well. And Bob said, "Hey, look, I think you should spend some time with my dad and travel with him." And that was, I would go over to his house, and we'd go through financials, and I learned more sitting at the breakfast table there than I did, sitting in an office in New York. So it was a wonderful time.
And then kind of full circle, KSL gets involved in it. They acquire Club Corp, and then you make a decision that you're going to go off on your own. Pegasus.
Right, that's right. So I decided to do my first startup, and I partnered with the Carlyle Group there, and we made those investments. And the first few years were great, and then Lehman fell, right? And then as a first-time CEO, I learned what it really takes to be a CEO at that point, because I'd never seen a recessionary period. I'd never seen cash flows contract 30%. I'd never seen an interest rate environment like that, and so I began to think differently about what it takes to be an investor and to be a CEO.
First time, really, that you didn't have enormous success, that you actually ran into some walls. How'd you deal with that personally?
It certainly wasn't an enormous success, for sure. It was difficult because, I felt like I had learned from some really terrific mentors, and that I had really had this very granular thesis that was tighter and refined. And I literally believed that on a portfolio basis, if I invested, that sure, well, there might be 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100 that but I was not anticipating clearly what happened, and so it hopefully made me a better CEO.
Then you went back to Club Corp.
Yeah, it was the KSL guys had purchased Club Corp, and they were kind enough to say, "Hey, we'd love to have you come back and be a chief investment officer for us." And they had an incredibly strong balance sheet, and obviously, I was intimately familiar with Club Corp. My foundation was formed at KSL. It was really the perfect marriage, and it really enabled me to continue to invest in a down market, off the balance sheet. Balance sheet lenders, strategic lenders in the space were non-existent at that point.
And what'd y'all buy? Talk to us about some of the deals you did when you were chief investment officer there.
Predominantly, the thesis there was, high-end equity clubs. And so we actually, ironically, we acquired a club from Bank of North Georgia, and just in a trough, Country Club of the South. And we did a lot of acquisitions like that, just wonderful clubs that we're able to acquire. I would sit in office buildings in Atlanta, and the buildings would be empty when I'd be interviewing with bankers because they weren't leased out, and it was just a terrible time. And you fast forward, today with Arcis, we own Country Club of the South. We acquired it from Club Corp. So it's gone full circle.
And in those, you largely went in, and the critics would say at that time that you actually overpaid for them, that you were paying multiples that were on the market. But what you really were looking at is how can I improve the operating side by bringing skills, expertise, and scale to it.
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag. When people ask me about trailing multiples, it could be, 4 times to 15 times, really depending upon the opportunity. And we've certainly competed in auction processes with investment banks, like when we did the Pac Life acquisition. And so, but to your point, it really is about not today and trailing cash flow. It's what does those cash flows look like in FY3, 4, and 5, and what does that revised revenue mix look like?
Yeah.
So you're pretty busy.
We are busy.
Corp. You've got a lot coming at you. And in fact, they're talking now about IPO, sell, et cetera, which can be pretty attractive from an equity standpoint for you. But once again, you decide, maybe that's not the route, and maybe I'll go off on my own again.
Right. No, it was, for me, Tom, it was, I looked at the market.
Why give that up?
I looked at the market, and there was about $3.5 billion worth of distressed debt coming due. The time frame we're talking here is 2013-ish,
Yeah.
And so I had this idea that the only platform ever has been Club Corp in terms of Robert's sort of vision to create a hub in every major metropolitan area in the United States. And so for me, I thought I've never seen this opportunity in one investment to be able to do that. And so I went home and talked to my wife, and we took a walk with the dog.
Tell us about the walk.
Yeah,
there's a pretty famous walk here.
And I said, look, I'm working with guys that I really respect and I've known a long time, and it looks like we've got an IPO in the offing, and this could be our opportunity, sort of post Lehman, right? And I said, but I've got this idea. I said, I think maybe I should quit my job and walk away from that equity and probably work a few years, but I think I can build something, with all this maturities coming due.
And at that time, I want to dig in because you mentioned your wife earlier. Talk about that marriage relationship and how supportive she was of not only that walk, but then the next few walks, so to speak.
Well, and going through this the second time.
Yeah.
Right. A very patient woman, no doubt about it. That's why she's the decision maker, Tom, right? And all jokes aside, if I wouldn't have, when I first went, with the KKR investment, I wouldn't have taken that opportunity. We had just gotten married. We'd just gotten back from our honeymoon in Greece. And I said, I want to try something I've never done before. And quite frankly, it might not work out. And she supported me there. And she said, what's the worst thing you can do? You'll get a job. And then when I did the first startup, same conversation. And, for us, it's really been about communication. It's been, we establish timelines and we keep an open dialogue about it. If it becomes too much for one or the other, then, if she said it's too much for me, I'm out. And she's, stuck by me every time. And so, with this one was, I had some meaningful equity and a really, a great opportunity with some people I really respected. So this one wasn't as easy. And again, she supported me. I didn't know that it was going to be 6 years that I wouldn't take a salary, but that was maybe a little longer than we did. She bargained for.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So you decide you're going to go off on your own, but you don't have any more than a couple of pages that give a concept on and you start walking the streets, seeing if anybody's going to be interested in buying into this thing. Tell us about it.
I don't sound like a very smart guy making that move, do I? It was such an incredible opportunity. I felt like I did not want to have regret. I felt like if I didn't take that leap of faith, that I would regret it for the rest of my life. And believe me, I mean, I played those games inside my own head about, why don't you wait and we'll take this company public, have a liquidity event, then go do it. But I knew that opportunity truly only existed at that moment
because of the debt coming up, and you had a window,
right? And and so for me, I reached out to really the 5 brightest investors I knew, and I went to LA, I went to New York, I went to Aspen. I met with a variety of people, and really it was to poke holes in my thesis. And to my surprise, every one of them said, not only do I think you should do it, we'd be interested in doing it with you.
And Fortress ended up.
And Fortress was one of those partners. And so that's kind of where the Odyssey began. I literally, we had a meeting in New York and grabbed dinner at Milo's afterwards. And I got on an airplane back and had to figure out partnership agreements and corporate overhead. But, and then at that point, began to look at some transactions.
Yeah, take us to the first 12 months. What did those look like?
The first 12 months, I immediately afterwards, I began negotiating the partnership agreement, and then as I was doing that, I was sourcing deals, and there was a large transaction, CNL at the time,
that was and $320 million. That was really the bump.
Yeah, it was absolutely a huge opportunity, and so I literally was throwing down the American Express card and not chartering the planes you guys fly on. They were twin engine planes. And, and I was flying around the country and negotiating a partnership agreement and, had the good sense to hire a really, a great guy, Andy Crossan, that had worked in sourcing for a couple of public companies and then began to sort of build a team that are with me today and have been a key catalyst of that growth. But it was it was one of those situations where, in 38 days, I looked at 48 assets and literally was negotiating the contract at the same time. I've never experienced anything that crazy in my life.
So let's come back to where we were talking about. Arcis is a very different organization. If you look at Club Corp Invited now, their properties generally fall within one category within the golf. Now, they have some downtown clubs and those sorts of things, but they fall into it. And if I look at other players, they, again, may be in the daily fee or they may be in private, but they're not in all of these. In addition to that, you not only went membership, which you would have at Invited, a Club Corp, but you've really developed a subscription model, 35,000 plus, somewhere in there, that range. Did you know at that time that you wanted to evolve so that it was multifaceted, so that it wasn't just going after the 65-year-old golfer, but I'm going to go younger? That I'm going to go after subscriptions, not memberships, that I'm going to be willing to have a portfolio that's everything from a high-end private club to all that daily fee, as you said, the cargo shorts. I'm not sure I used that description before, but we'll take cargo ship. When did you
forgive me if you guys wear cargo shorts? I didn't mean to offend you.
When did you see that involved? Was that part of the front end, or did that evolve based on the portfolio that you were getting?
No, it was absolutely part of the thesis. I wasn't smart enough to figure out how I could grow a portfolio to a couple of $1 billion in enterprise value with aging baby boomers. My thought process was, as they age out, who's going to replace them? And for me, it has to be someone in daily fee golf. And so for me, it was very key that about 50% of our portfolio mix be daily fee.
What did you believe about the standard golfer at the time that attracted them to a course when you were buying it? This is pre-COVID. Right. What did you believe about their interactions and how they hit on the range and the types of holes they'd want to play? Like, how did that evolve into your thesis as you look to buy the right subset, frankly, of properties to go attract that player?
Well, it was two things. It was the mental model was the 4 pillars we talked about. And that's really just sort of, family-centric spend, share of wallet, and where they're spending it disproportionately. So that was really the mental model there.
Now, go back. That's the wellness, the hospitality, not just the golf, but the experience.
Right. Yeah. And that programming and content, almost like a day part strategy in media, by hour, by day, how do we entertain each of those family members? And so those 4 pillars is really, it doesn't...
revenue streams.
Right. And so that's every operator from a middle market daily fee to a high end private is thinking with that same middle model. Again, the only difference is that breadth and scope of what our offerings are. But yeah, I mean, the key is, a lot of people talk about high end, and that's about exclusivity and access, and then from the low end, it's about approachability, right? Yeah. And it's about making that individual feel comfortable. So that's why we lean into the gamification. That's why we lean into the range, and that was early on. That was the thesis. Now, did I have any idea that COVID was going to happen? Did I have any idea that we're going to experience this big wave? No.
Well, I mentioned to it, and we probably ought to get the background. I said membership and subscription. Tell us how that subscription works and how important it is financially to Arcis as an entity.
Incredibly important. And, for us, the subscription was something that I was thinking about and clearly familiar with, and I thought it would create greater stickiness with the daily fee consumer. And then when we acquired CNL, we originally acquired 9 assets in Phoenix, and pricing for daily fee golf in Phoenix in the summer can become very commoditized, and so my thought
it gets hot there.
Yes,
a little bit,
a little hot, and so my thought was, let's give the customer greater optionality. Let's have a subscription offering where they're not just playing one course, they're playing multiple courses. Mm-hmm. Let's provide content and entertainment virtually every hour of the day at these facilities. And whereas a lot of our competitors are more of an asset light model, they don't control governance in that regard. They also don't control the CapEx levers in terms of the types of investments we make for the range, for gamification, geared towards that younger, less affluent customer.
Mm-hmm. Kyle brought it up earlier, but I want to go into it a little bit deeper, and that is kind of where golf is going. You've got high end, where we are today, and you've got those cargo. A lot of people, though, would say that the game of golf is becoming bifurcated, that what you talked about in the middle doesn't exist.
Right.
It is either going to go high end, membership, ultra price tag, or it's going to go down to daily fee, e.g. the municipal type.
Locals, yeah.
How do you protect that middle when you've got the costs going up and you've got now a group or a segment coming in that doesn't particularly like spending 4 hours on anything?
It's interesting when you start talking about a K-shaped economy. I mean, we've not experienced that. I mean, in fact, our middle market's our fastest growing segment. And we're very intentional in terms of vertically integrating that customer from low end to high end, and it becomes more aspirational.
So does your low end get to be high end? In other words, somebody comes in on your daily fee courses. Can you upsell them into one of your clubs?
Absolutely. So that person that's new to the game that can't break 100 and is out at a municipal golf course that we operate and is banging balls and drinking long neck beers and cargo shorts, once they can hit it in the air and they start to experience more success. Yeah. They want to play, a more middle market daily fee golf course.
Well, I assume their career goes higher from an affordability standpoint.
Absolutely. So it's both career trajectory and golf trajectory, and then those individuals ultimately become members of clubs. Even at high end daily fee clubs like Cowboys in Dallas, we have an annual membership. Many of those members transfer that membership into other clubs we own in Dallas that are solely private.
Sure. I want to go into something a little bit unique. Talk to us about the influence of, call it the social media of golf. Grant Horvat, the Bryan Bros, Bob Does Sports. You've got all these people that have made golf a content game, not just a golf game, if that makes sense. I know y'all have partnered and done certain things with certain personalities and certain athletes. Talk about that strategy as a way to reel people into the courses that you own.
Well, and here at this tournament, I think they've got 5 or 6 people that are doing just social media in the next room for the tournament.
Exactly.
No, absolutely. And, people like Grant Horvat have been great for the game. And Grant's been, and the Bryan brothers, I mean, they've done multiple events. I mean, they actually did a make the cut, competition here after the Augusta National Women's Amateur last year. Yeah. And they've done events at many of our courses throughout the country, as well as Bryson DeChambeau and others. And the amount of eyeballs, the amount of interest in the game is a result of watching that. I mean, a lot of the younger population that's watching golf is watching it on YouTube. They're not watching it on Sunday.
Correct.
Yeah, and so that has been instrumental in terms of our growth, and that's why we have 5 or 6 people here this week, and that's why we're posting multiple times a day. Is we want them to have that exposure. We want that young girl that comes to watch these players to say, wow, I want to go play an Arcis golf course, and oftentimes, the players that are out here are practicing at our golf courses, so it becomes aspirational.
Yeah, you've been successful, but the number of golf courses in the United States has declined substantially. The next 10 years, do we start seeing a continued drop in the 200-acre golf courses, and instead it's the Top Golf, which you have affiliations with, it becomes the simulators, it becomes the 18-hole theme putting courses, those sorts of things? Is golf going to shift away from what is tradition to kind of find a way to hit the ball in different settings that may not have the same costs or the same time commitments?
I don't think anything replaces it. I think there are a couple of things going on there. I mean, for us, we don't have any contraction, obviously, because all of the clubs that we own are in major metropolitan areas, infill locations. Most of that contraction is in more tertiary locations. For us, we're absolutely leaning in with the gamification at Cowboys and the putting course. We are going to we're going to build 3 short courses. They're about 1,000 yards long in the next 18 months. So again, we're going to give people a lot of opportunity to learn to play the game. And quite frankly, I think even if you are what we're creating, like take the short course. It may be a 150-yard shot over a bunker for the dad, and then the up tee might be 50 yards with no hazards in front for the beginner. And they have an opportunity to go out and spend 45 minutes playing 9 holes together, and they're hitting all the shots, really the scoring shots.
And are those going to be designed, e.g., by a golf course right? I mean, we go see a lot of the short courses today, and it's basically 100 yards of grass, and then somebody threw a bunker in it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any relationship to the type of picture that you'd see out there. How do you bring that short piece so that it's actually got some character to it?
I mean, for me, I think you can absolutely add character to short courses. I think there are a lot of short courses that every hole is about 50 yards and there are no hazards in front. You're absolutely correct, and that's not what we're going to build. I mean, we're going to,
give an example of something that's out there that you want to emulate.
Well, I mean, I'm never going to emulate it with the ocean, but I mean, take number 7 at Pebble, right? I mean, if you're hitting 125 yards, that's a pretty tough shot. Number 12 at Augusta, pretty difficult shot. Cypress Point, that golf course is, 6,500 yards or less. Marion, 6,500 yards or less. I'm a big believer we can make, like this golf course, a shot maker's course. Yeah. I mean, this golf course here, as soon as we complete this today, I mean, I'll be sitting down with the scoring team and the tournament team from Augusta National to talk about changes for next year. And we're continually thinking about, trees. Can the player, like here, for example, on number 4, we lost a tree with Hurricane Helene last year, and we put a couple of sight bunkers there on the left-hand side. Great reviews. It makes the holes probably a little bit easier, but it's a great hole. And 16, we had a large tree on the right that the players couldn't cover. We eliminated that tree, added bunkers. Now there's a risk reward scenario for them that makes the hole more enjoyable. And it's really more about that than adding yards. I challenge anyone that comes out here. This golf course is over 1,000 yards longer from the back tees than the best women amateurs in the world are playing right now. Yeah. I challenge you to play from their tees. Yeah. I mean, it's a shot maker's course.
So how much feedback do you lean on from the players at ANWA into these kind of course recreation, course thoughts, and ultimately what you're going to do?
Well, here, I mean, it's twofold, right? I mean, we do member surveys, and we're in communication with our members about what their needs and wants are here. In addition to that, obviously, the leadership team at Augusta National has been phenomenal, and for us just to be able to support them, and this has been a dream. Sure. And it's it's a lot of fun to walk 18 holes with the tournament team and the agronomy team from Augusta National and the chase of perfection, right? And I jokingly tell them that I'm getting a lot more than I'm giving in those conversations, but I'll take it.
It's great. It's great.
Where is golf going to go? Do you continue to see the growth in it that we've seen over the last couple of years? Do you continue to see people of color and younger, especially females, get in at play? Because for a long time, we had good growth of the female player, but they didn't stick with it.
Right.
It wasn't sticky. Where does it go?
I think it's definitely different this time. And again, and COVID did play a part in that. And I believe for those that don't lean in to the gamification, to the short game areas, to not trying to make the golf courses increasingly longer and to make them more fun and more approachable, I think there will be a contraction with those and there'll be less interest. But I think, I think overall, there's a lot of individuals that are looking at golf differently today, and they're leaning into that same. And I hope they do, quite frankly. I know for us, I'm not contemplating building a golf course that can host a U.S. Open. That's not my dream. My dream is to build a golf course that I can bring somebody out here that shoots 95 or 65 and they both enjoy it.
So if I look at your P&L today and I look at it in 10 years and look at the revenue side, there's going to be a chunk that comes out of memberships. You're going to have a chunk of the daily fees. You're going to have a chunk of food and beverage, those sorts of things, and wellness, what I'll call ancillary type of things. How much is that going to change today for what you see in 5-10 years of Arcis? Will there be a major shift more towards food and beverage, hospitality, wellness, and away from the traditional golf revenue?
I think the revenue mix it already is changing dramatically. And I would tell you that as you elevate a club in terms of experience, and invariably dues are higher, initiation fees are higher, that member and that demographic utilizes the club differently. And so, at clubs like Champions Retreat, we are eliminating a lot of event space and creating more member space. And so here there are multiple food and beverage outlets. There's a golf speakeasy that, with Nicholas Palmer and Player that's very unique. And so it's, we
saw that facility, that space. That was really
it's a neat
interesting.
space.
So, we're creating spaces first and foremost for the members. And while we still do events, not as many events, and I think that will continue to change and evolve. I think from a health and wellness perspective, we'll see significant growth there. That's something we're leaning in dramatically. Longevity. We're looking at a couple of partnerships now, and we're investing significant capital. And the social house we're building, in Scottsdale, as you might imagine, will have a lot of recovery and Pilates and a variety of factors that most people in golf don't typically think of, geared towards that audience. Golf, green fee, cart fee at a private club, that might be 15-20% of the revenue. And as you mentioned, dues is a disproportionate share, but you have to ask yourself what's driving that.
Yeah.
And it's that overall experience.
But again, a lot of your courses, you don't have that. You've got the subscription down on the daily fee.
And with a subscription, it's that's proven to be a very sticky customer, and they spend more. Not all that dissimilar to what you would see at Prime with Amazon. And but we can't rest on just greater optionality in terms of number of courses or events. We've got to continue to evolve and lean in. That's why we're adding, the social house. That's why we're adding the short course. That's why we're renovating the food and beverage outlets. We're providing new, no different than here. When the final putt drops on Saturday, we will redo every bunker on this golf course. We will continue to do drainage work. We'll do tee work. We're going to build a new driving range, a new short game area. We will we'll do rackets. We'll do a whole racket facility, indoor racket facility, in addition to the concierge program we talked about before. So it's never ending.
How many courses do you see Arcis buying in the next 5 or 10 years? Is that a big market out there? Are you going to be a buyer of courses, or more taking the existing properties and generating more revenue out of them?
Both. I think that, we'll continue to be opportunistic. Our thesis has really been bigger bets, fewer bets, as you know. We acquired a large portfolio from Invited last year. But prior to that, we acquired the Pac Life portfolio. Prior to that, we bought Phil Mickelson's portfolio.
Mickelson's,
CNL, a variety of things. And we've also made some, strategic, bets that were bolt-on acquisitions for that. We'll continue to do that. But there's a tremendous amount of white space in terms of what we're doing as it relates to 4 pillars. And quite frankly, I think we're pretty good at it, but I'm really excited to see when we become actually really good at it.
So where do you got to get better?
We have to continually lean in. I think the people that we're talking about, the question is, what's scalable in the future versus historically, right? And so the types of people that we hire have different skill sets because we're asking different things from them. This is not, I mean, if you walk into our pro shops, if you walked in our pro shop today, we have 5 individuals that have retail backgrounds. They're all dressed in the same sort of uniform, and their focus is retail sales. We have a phenomenal instruction team here. They're out on the range. And so it's really the bifurcation of responsibilities, in terms of outside services, retail, and I think that requires a different type of individual. First and foremost, they got to think differently about it. And then you've got to not only educate them about that, but train them, develop them. We're doing a program right now called the Ascend program, in which we hire incredibly talented kids out of college, and so we hired 4 for our Dallas cohort. Then we did another cohort in Scottsdale.
Are they interning? You rotate them around?
No, they're actual employees. They're actual employees. So so now we've got.
What kind of a career path do they have?
The 13 or 14 that we have currently in the system this year that we've hired out of college or master's degrees are pursuing everything from operations to be general managers, multi-site, to marketing, to accounting, to sales. I mean, the thing about golf is that, we have 7,500 employees. As you mentioned, we have an enterprise value of, $2.5 billion or so. There's lots of
people told me that that's undervalued. That it's actually more than that, but we weren't supposed to say that.
Well, lots of opportunity, right?
So I want to jump in as we wrap up here. And we've talked a lot about the future of the game, future of Arcis, but what's the future of Blake Walker? What do you still have left on the table that you want to go learn, that you want to go accomplish, and that you want to go do as the leader of this business?
As you've known me long enough to know that I'm absolutely learning every day. And if the day that I don't get up and I'm not super excited about it, and I don't get up thinking about what's possible, is the day that I quit working. And I've never been more optimistic about this industry and about this company than I am sitting here with you today. And I'm really excited about that revised revenue mix and what it looks like. And when we talk about size, I think we'll double in size, but it's not going to be necessarily number of assets. It's going to be the white space we have within those 4 pillars, as we grow the business.
That's great.
So if you were sitting down with Blake Walker and he just got out of SMU and was thinking about doing the same sort of things that you did decades ago, what would you tell him to do differently?
Well, one thing you ought to include in this interview is you should pop up our axioms, because those are really lessons learned that if I were talking to my 22-year-old self, my learning curve would have been a lot less steep. I think that, for me, a lot of what we've done has been unconventional, and there's been lots of naysayers, but I've passionately pursued it. I mean, for me, there's a lot of entrepreneurs like me that, have a contrarian thesis and are willing to sort of forsake, compensation and take that risk. But, I think the people in this organization are what really, when I think about that growth, that's where it's really going to come from. I'm developing future leaders. I mean, my responsibilities today are totally different than they were 11 years ago as a startup, when I was flying around that plane and, and thinking, oh boy, I hope this works out. Now I'm spending a lot more time mentoring and coaching and really, quite frankly, trying to find people that know a lot more about those subjects than I do.
Are you having more fun doing that then?
I absolutely am. I've never worked with better people. I've never had better investors in my life. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun.
Is there anything that can hold you back?
My own limitations. That's about it. My board, my investors, my team have given me an incredible amount of autonomy to lead this business. And when you go back to the gratitude, I'm incredibly grateful for it, because I've never had an opportunity like this ever in my life.
That's great.
That's terrific. Kyle, we've had a good time here, being on the road for the first time. And Blake, it's terrific being with you. We've gotten a chance to see one of your assets that you've done something special with. I started out by saying that you are one of the most influential people in golf, according to the polls and the various magazines and that sort of thing. I don't know of anybody else that's got a partnership with Augusta National Golf Club, so I know that there's a whole host of folks that are involved in the industry that would love to be in your position. And a big congratulations. You've got a great organization, and look forward to seeing continued great things. We appreciate you being with us.
Tom, thanks so much for making the trek to Augusta.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Again, today's episode is sponsored by Clay Cooley Automotive, a family-owned, family-operated automotive company serving the local DFW Metroplex for over 22 years.